Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Nicole Monteiro, and I want to thank you so much for joining this important webinar, Maintaining Your Mental Health and Well-Being and Wellness During the Coronavirus Outbreak. So I'm really glad that you all could join and sign on. We're going to have time for question and answer, and for you all to give any comments or any feedback that you'd like to have or give about the webinar. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. And if you have any questions, anything you want to say, go ahead and put it in the chat. You can even let us know where you're from, what's going on with you, how you're handling the coronavirus outbreak. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so we're talking about how to maintain your mental health and well-being during the coronavirus outbreak. So if you don't know me already, my name is Dr. Nicole Monteiro. I'm CEO of the Center for Healing and Development. I'm a licensed psychologist, and at the Center for Healing and Development, which we call CHAD for short, our goal is to help you to heal, grow, and to transform, and to help individuals, families, communities to really focus on their own mental health, their wellness, and ways that they can support those. So you can check us out at chadwellness.com. So today, I want us to just kind of give an overview of what's going on and what you can expect to experience, and also what some healthy coping strategies are. But more than that, I want us to try to practice in the moment what it means to be able to cope healthily with these things that we're going through. So I want us to start with a short breathing exercise. And that's something that you'll be able to do on your own when you're at home, when you're not on this webinar. And I also want us to be able to just acknowledge what we're all experiencing. And to that end, I'm going to talk about some normal reactions to these abnormal circumstances that we're going through. So what you can expect or what you might experience at some point. And then the good part, which is healthy coping. What can you do? What is in your control to be able to help to cope in a healthy way and to get through the difficulties that we're all going through? Okay. So mindful breathing, we're going to do a short exercise. And I know probably before this pandemic, but certainly now you're probably hearing a lot about mindfulness. Everyone's talking about mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? It's defined as the practice of bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment or obligation. Just noticing what you're feeling, thinking, and sensing in the moment. And the underlying goal is for you to really realize that you are enough in this moment, okay? So we're gonna do a brief exercise, and this is called breathing into the part of your body that feels tense or uncomfortable. And I wanted to do this one because many of us are at home, right? We're on shelter in place, we're on lockdown, we're on quarantine. And so many of us have had changes in just how we deal with our bodies, our bodily routine. A lot of us are sitting a lot, not getting out and exercising, if that's something that we used to do. So we might be feeling new tensions, new areas of discomfort and uncomfortability in our bodies. So I want us to do a brief exercise, and you can do this on your own. It's really simple after this webinar, okay? So I want you to focus on the area of your body that feels tense or uncomfortable. Think about what it's trying to tell you. Why do you think it feels this way? In your mind, ask the area what you need to do to make that area of your body more comfortable. How can you nurture it better in the future? What can you do to relieve that tension? Now I want you to take a deep breath in. Hold it for a minute. And as you breathe out, imagine the breath going directly to that area that is uncomfortable or feeling tension. As the breath goes to that area, you might feel or notice that it might relax a little bit. Let's try it again. Deep breath in. Hold for a moment. And as you breathe out, imagine the breath going directly to that area or those areas that are uncomfortable. Okay, we're going to do it one last time. It might help if it's comfortable for you to gently touch the area that is affected, since that can help you to focus your breath. In. Hold for a moment. And as you exhale, imagine the breath going directly to that area that is uncomfortable. Remembering that initial question or those initial questions, what is it that that area of your body is trying to tell you? Why does it feel this way? And thinking about what it is that your body needs to feel more comfortable and less tension. Okay, one last deep breath in. Okay, how was that for you guys? Let me know in the chat, right? What was that like for you? Feeling okay? All right, so that's something we'll talk a little bit at the end about why it's so important to have a routine and things that you do that are in your control. And one thing that's in your control is practicing things like mindful breathing or different breathing techniques. It even takes just a few seconds, a few moments, but those are moments that are completely within your control and that help you to calm yourself and relax yourself. Okay, so I want us to just acknowledge that we are all being affected by this, right? At this point in the outbreak or pandemic, you know, we've kind of, as a global society and as a country, we've gotten past some of the denial where we weren't sure if this was real, you know, what's going on, is it really going to affect us? We're now at the point, if we think about a disaster, we're like in the middle of it, right? So almost all of us are being negatively affected in some way by the COVID-19 pandemic. We aren't all affected in the same ways. So what you're feeling or worried about or not worried about might be different from someone that you know or someone close to you, right? We're all hurting though in some ways. Some of us are suffering economically. Some of us are nervous about declines in our mental health. Maybe we have been making improvements and this is just taking us back to a place or a space that we don't want to be in. Some of us are actually really scared to become infected. We might have be part of those vulnerable populations or have prior underlying conditions, and we might really be nervous about that. Some of us might be worried about the fate of legacies that we've been building, whether it's business or family wealth or any aspect of our life that just seems to be disrupted right now, okay? So it's important, many of us, ourselves or people around us, might need to give voice to our worries and to feel validated for doing so. And I also wanna say that everyone handles stress and copes in a different way. So you might be someone or you might know other people who actually don't feel comfortable saying when they're upset or nervous about something. And it's important that we all give each other space to cope and to deal with it in ways, you know, in different ways. Not everyone is going to have the same reaction or deal with it in the same way, right? But it's important, at least from my perspective, that it be acknowledged that all of us are going to be affected in one way or another. Okay. And so in some ways, when we talk about what we're going through, part of it is just to know that these are normal reactions to an abnormal, disruptive situation. We're in a time where day to day it's unpredictable. We're not sure what's going on. And so part of what we're experiencing is just to be able to know that whatever it is we're going through is normal. because the situation is abnormal, it's disruptive, it's changed so much about our lives, our day-to-day lives. And so even though it might feel like, wait, I should have it all together, or I should be handling things differently, it's important to know that if you are responding in a way that, you're not sure if you should be responding that way, that what you're experiencing is normal. These are normal reactions to abnormal, disruptive situation. And one thing to ask is this a disaster? So I am a disaster mental health psychologist. I've worked in the aftermath of disasters, and I've helped organizations and individuals be able to get back up and running and get themselves going in the aftermath of a disaster. So one thing you might be asking yourself is this in fact a disaster, right? So there are different definitions of a disaster, but one definition is that it's sort of sudden misfortune that results in loss of life, loss of property, or any kind of other damage, right? And so the idea is that there's this misfortune, it's catastrophic. In many ways, it's sudden, or it seems like the aftermath, is really huge and happens without warning, or without a lot of warning. The other key is that it's community-wide. It's a community-wide event that is beyond our control and has lasting effects. And so if you think about it, that's what's happening, right? We're all kind of being affected, whether or not we have the coronavirus, whether or not someone we know is infected. We are being affected because either our jobs are affected, our daily life, we're being asked to stay in and quarantine. Our kids might be home at school, home from school and homeschooling now. We might have people in our families who are vulnerable in terms of their health, and we can't see them. We don't want to be around them because we don't want to put them at risk. In some way, all of us are being affected. So this is sort of a community or society-wide event. And so much of it feels beyond our control. And that can be very triggering for so many people who struggle in general with the lack of control in their life. Right. And that's sort of the biggest effect for the widest population of people. So overall, most of us, I'm not going to say, all of us, but many of us will not get infected with this virus. However, almost all of us are affected by the fallout from it, right? And much of it can feel like it is outside of our control. And so as a result, it can just feel like the rug is being pulled from under you all of a sudden, right? You have no control. Everything is just, taken from under your feet. It can also feel like you're struggling to adjust to a changed universe or reality. And so you've been probably hearing the term a lot, the new normal. Everything is sort of new and different. We're having to adjust day by day. And this new normal, we don't have time to adjust before a new normal comes up, right? So we might be told in one location to shelter in place or quarantine ourselves for 2 weeks, and then it gets extended for another week or another 2 weeks. So it really makes it hard to plan, and it makes it hard for us to adjust and to really get back to a new normal, because the new normal keeps changing over and over, right? So that's part of the real difficulty of it. And part of what can happen is, this is what we call, when you think about trauma, right? When you're in a very dangerous situation that overwhelms your ability to cope with it, you often go, if you think about physical danger, you go into what's called fight or flight mode. I know many of you have heard of it. And this is where, and there's also a part that's called freeze. When you're in danger, your whole body, your whole system is designed to be able to protect itself by either fighting. If it can't fight, then to flee or get away. And in some cases where there's no other recourse, to freeze and just kind of, freeze yourself to try to almost play dead, right? If you think about a physical danger. And so many of us, this puts our whole body, including our brains, into a certain mode where we're tunnel vision focused on just survival. You can think of the fight or flight mode as survival mode. Only key functions or key things that we need. That's what our body, our neurotransmitters, our hormones, everything is focused on just what we need, which is survival. And that can make it hard to see the broader perspective or the bigger picture. And so a little bit later, I'm going to talk about how you want to be aware of or be cognizant of changes in your thinking, where you might be becoming more pessimistic. You might be doing what we call catastrophizing, and that's where it's hard for you to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You just see things negatively. And part of that is because when you're in fight or flight mode, your main goal is tunnel focused on survival. And so many of us, even though we might be sitting in our homes, right, we always talk about fight or flight as something that developed, in our early human days, when, we were in the jungle and there was a tiger that was going to come get us, right? And so fight or flight was thought of as this really physical thing. And you might be thinking, well, I'm sitting at home in my bed, or I'm on my couch watching TV. What's the danger? Where's the fight or flight? But because of all of the ways that your life may have changed unpredictably, you might be facing economic peril, you might be facing changes in your relationships. Because of all of the changes that you can't control, that is interpreted as a threat to your system, to your body, and to your brain. And so your body and brain often react in similar ways as if you were out in the jungle, right? Your body doesn't know the difference between stress and stressors. So for you, this may be interpreted by your body and your brain as a stressor that puts it into that fight or flight mode. And it's important to recognize that, because we're going to talk about, when we talk about healthy coping, what are the things that you can do for your body, for yourself, to make sure that you can help, to manage this survival mode and even get yourself out of it, so that you can calm your body and your body can feel like, and your brain can feel like, they are no longer under threat or under extreme stress. Okay. And in particular, there's something unique about epidemics and pandemics. They are actually a unique type of natural disaster. So we often talk about disasters as sort of man-made disasters, but also natural disasters. And what makes epidemics and pandemics so sort of troubling and even anxiety provoking is they kind of take away our normal everyday psychological defenses that we use to stay in denial about just how vulnerable we are. So on a day-to-day basis, if you think about it, there are many things in life that you don't have control over. And there are many ways that you are just vulnerable. So many things could happen. You could get in your car and get into an accident. There could be an accident in your house that hurts you, or you could get ill. There's so many things outside of your control. But in order to function and to go out and live life, there are certain ways that we kind of have to be in denial about just how vulnerable we are. We kind of put that on the back burner, and that's healthy. That's called healthy denial, healthy psychological defenses. The problem is, though, with an epidemic or pandemic, we're hearing this sort of the mystery of this microbe. We can't see these germs. We don't know. We can't even see what these coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus looks like, but we know that it's sweeping through the world and sweeping through different countries, and it's infecting people, and it's making people sick, and it's killing people. And so it's like this invisible enemy, which really puts us back in that position of recognizing just how vulnerable we are. So in addition to being sort of a physical threat, it's also a psychological threat, okay? And so it's just important to kind of, I'm giving you this information not to kind of make you scared and overwhelmed, but for you to know, if you are feeling overwhelmed by this or having anxiety about this, there's a reason why. And epidemics and pandemics, they just kind of bring out that anxiety about just how vulnerable we are in this life as human beings. Okay. And it also, it's sort of long lasting. With a tornado or a hurricane, the event happens in a relatively short amount of time, right? The after effect is really long, so it might take a long time to rebuild, but the actual event is pretty short-lived. With this pandemic, you know, it's going on and on and on. We keep hearing that it might cycle through seasons, or, you know, that the shelter in place might, some experts say it really needs to be 6 to 10 weeks, or it might be until the end of June or August, you know, or July or August until we get back to normal, or a new normal. So this idea of it being long and drawn out really sort of extends those psychological responses that we have to it. Okay. And as we said, there's so many different types of reactions that you might have, and they are actually normal. Okay, there's a whole wide range of reactions. They are all completely normal. So you might have reactions that are in your body that are more physical. You might have different behavioral responses. You might have emotional reactions, and you might have changes in your thinking. All right, so in terms of the physical or bodily reactions, if you are actually, you know, and it depends on who you are. We know there are certain people who are really at risk. If you're on the front lines in as a healthcare worker at a hospital or at a clinic, or any way interacting with patients who have or might become infected with coronavirus, you are kind of what we call like up close and front, on the front lines, having major exposure to this traumatic event. And so your body might really respond, you know, with all of those fight or flight things: heart racing, palpitations, sweaty palms, going into a panic, feeling like you're having difficulty breathing, feeling warm. And if you think about it, a lot of that mimics what some of the symptoms of the coronavirus are. And so that is even more troubling, because another sort of fallout of this is the psychological worry that you have symptoms of the coronavirus. And so if you're really sensitive to what's going on in your body, or kind of have a little bit of be a little bit of a hypochondriac, always thinking something's wrong, and all you're hearing about are these symptoms, it could kick you into sort of a hyper awareness, right? So your bodily reactions could be all of those, like rapid breathing, nausea, even diarrhea, constipation. A lot of times anxiety really is manifest in our digestive system, right? You might have muscle tension or pain, which is why I wanted to do that breathing exercise that looked at breathing into your areas of tension or discomfort. Headaches, changes in your sleep, changes even in your body temperature, okay? Other responses, including behavioral responses, is that there are going to be different behaviors, because your whole routine for many of you have changed. Even if you are one of those essential workers who's going out and working day to day, your whole routine has changed. You're probably wearing some form of protective gear, masks, gloves. There may not be as many people or coworkers at work. You might be asked to work longer hours or different hours, right? So much has changed. And you also might notice that there are dietary changes. There are a lot of social media memes going around about how people are overeating because they're just home with nothing to do. But some people, when they get nervous, they undereat, so they might not be eating enough. You might be feeling like you are socially withdrawing. And in many ways, most of us are, right? If we're asked to stay in, we're self-isolating, and that can bring about a whole host of problems that people are sort of struggling with right now. You find that you are trying to avoid any kind of triggers, as we call them, or reminders of this whole thing. So you might want to shut out the news. You might get upset if people talk to you about it. You might kind of go into that mode. You just don't want to hear about it. Or you might be the opposite, where you just immerse yourself. You're 24/7 news cycle, watching everything about the coronavirus. Okay, so this is part of you trying to find your balance and find your way of adjusting to the new normal. Okay, you might be stuck in the house with someone. You might be homeschooling your kids, you might be with a spouse, you might be alone, right? All of those can be triggers because they represent differences in the way that you usually interact with and relate to people, okay? And, just one note, there's been a lot of talk about how this is affecting relationships and couples. For some people, they feel like they're getting closer to their loved ones. For others, because there has been tension in their relationships and in their household, it can feel like this is exacerbating it. So we're going to talk about some ways to cope with that. Okay. Emotional reactions. You could be actually tearful and be asking yourself, well, why am I so tearful? Right. You might be overly irritable, impatient. You might get angry. I saw some people talking about they notice hostility, when going out or going shopping or going out for walks in the park. When they interact with people, they notice that there's like a hostility among people. And, so people might be on edge and feeling really tense. And that could be part of the vulnerability, right? We're told to not go out, that this invisible contagion could get us when we're out. And so when you're outside, you're nervous, you're told to stay 6 feet away from people. You're nervous about getting close to people, or if people have a different sense of the urgency of this situation that might irritate you, it might make you feel upset, okay? In terms of your changes in your thinking, you might be engaging in more worry or ruminations, especially if you are already prone to that. So over and over thinking. And that's part of that distorted thinking that we were saying. If you start to get tunnel vision, how can I protect myself? How can I, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? What's going on with my money? What's going on with my kids' school? You could just be thinking over and over. You might actually become preoccupied with things that you had maybe been able to brush under the rug because you worked a lot or you had a certain routine. And now this is something I'm hearing a lot from people, that they aren't necessarily worried and thinking about the coronavirus, but so much about the things that are happening or had happened in their past, or that they're struggling with in their life outside of the coronavirus, are coming to the surface, and they're feeling overwhelmed. So their reaction is not necessarily to what's happening now, but to issues or difficulties, challenges that they maybe hadn't addressed before, and now they find themselves thinking over and over about them, okay? You might have difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, making uncharacteristic mistakes, okay? All of this is normal. And I'm not saying that everyone is going to have all of these things, right? Some people right now might actually feel like they're completely fine. What I tell people though is, when you're talking about a widespread event like this, a disaster like this, is you always want to kind of keep monitoring yourself and checking in with yourself, because you might feel like you're fine one day, and then, there's an accumulation of all of this pressure and all of the ways that this is all around us. And it might affect you later on, okay? And that's normal too. Sometimes the effects are not immediate, okay? And it's also important to think about, in terms of having compassion for yourself and other people, is that many people are experiencing a relapse of mental health symptoms that they had actually been working hard to get a hold of. So things that you might be working with a therapist, or other people would be working with a therapist or counselor around, which is, we would tell people, try not to isolate yourself. Well, what are we having to do now? Exactly that. We're having to isolate. A lot of people struggle with feeling trapped and like they lack control in key areas of their life, right? And so this can sort of just trigger that feeling all over again. People might struggle with obsessive worries. And again, this whole idea of constantly hearing about the symptoms of coronavirus, which could be, overlapping with symptoms of the flu, of the common cold, right? So people are asked to be so hyper vigilant and aware of what's going on with their body or the bodies of people close to them, that could actually tick up their obsessive worries, and so they might be feeling more anxious. They might be drinking or using substances more, and maybe they were trying to cut back or not make that a part of how they cope with things. They might be having a relapse and feelings of disconnection and depression, or they might feel like they are in the midst of a toxic relationship that with this crisis going on, they just can't get out of, okay? So, these are things that you might not see. So much of mental and emotional health is what's beneath the surface. It's not always observable to people around you. And sometimes it's not recognizable to you until you stop and think about it or stop and talk about it, okay? So it's really important to just have that in mind. Part of what we're going to talk about is how important it is to have compassion for yourself. Okay. And so having compassion for yourself is recognizing that whatever it is you might be experiencing is normal because you're in sort of a crisis situation. You might be experiencing fight or flight with your body or your brain. You might be having tunnel vision and difficulty seeing the big picture, which makes you more pessimistic and makes you see things more negatively. Okay. And this is why it's so important we talk about compassion, but also connection, reaching out to people, getting help from people, and bouncing ideas off of people so that you can get a different perspective on what you're going through. So I didn't want to kind of depress everybody, right? You might say, well, gosh, all of this sounds so horrible. You know, we're in fight or flight, we're in trauma, this is a disaster, everyone's being affected. But the good news is, you know, that awareness is so important to think about how you can come up with a plan for healthy coping. All right. And so it's so important to, if you haven't already, think about a routine or a process that helps you to de-stress, because stress is one of those hidden killers that can sort of take over your entire health and well-being before you even notice it, right? So it's important to learn to de-stress before stress takes over. And if you feel like you're at the point where you are being sort of overwhelmed by stress, it's never too late. So you don't have to say, oh gosh, it's too late, I'm already overwhelmed. It's never too late to start to implement ways of learning to cope in a more healthy way with stress. And one of the key things is to learn to take care of your basic needs. You know, this is something that as psychologists, we tell people all the time, and they sometimes kind of throw it off like, oh, I want to, you know, that's not what's really bothering me. But really at its foundation, self-care is really taking care of your basic needs. And I know many of you have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so this is something that's, you know, a lot of people learn about in school. And the idea is that there's sort of a pyramid of needs. The top part is all of those self-actualization and personal development and things like that. Then you have relationships and other needs, but at the bottom are your basic needs: food, shelter, feelings of safety, right? And so when your basic needs are not taken care of, it's hard to kind of, you know, do anything outside of that. And with all of this, the disruption that we described with this pandemic, it's easy to either ignore or neglect your basic needs, or if you were somebody that was already, you know, some people are workaholics, and so it's easy for them to neglect their basic needs. And now they're confronted with, oh gosh, I'm not working anymore. What do I do? Some people have always just not really given much thought to how important these basic foundational needs are. And so this is key. Things like food and nourishment, healthy foods. People are talking about how important it is to build up your immune system. And so even if you find that, you know, you're not able, you're home, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling depressed, and you're eating a lot of junk food, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it, but try little by little. What are healthy foods that you can insert into your diet once or twice a day, right? And then you just increase from there: a piece of fruit, some vegetables, some sort of whole grain, right? Those are important for helping you to feel full, giving you nutrients that you need, giving you a sense of feeling nourished and basically taken care of, right? You want to really make sure that you take time out to get adequate sleep and rest. So those are two different things, right? Rest is also sort of a mental state. And so you want to make sure you're, you know, scheduling in enough time for sleep, but that you're also making sure that you rest. And what does that mean? Not working around the clock on the computer, not constantly planning, and trying to give yourself moments of decompressing from thinking about all of this, right? So, and if you are somebody that you feel like you're on the other end, so we have two types of people in some ways, and many in between. But some people feel like they function they fall apart in the midst of a crisis, and other people feel like they function very, very well in a crisis. And that's often people who have had a history of trauma. And so if you're somebody who feels like you function really well, you can plan, you can focus, you can get things done, you need to be aware of the fact that once everything is over, you might crash, right? Nobody's system is set up to be in a constant state of hypervigilance and hyperarousal. So while you might be functioning well in the midst of the crisis, again, you want to kind of prepare yourself through a routine of sleep and rest, because you might actually be more prone to crash a little bit later down the line, and it might hit you out of nowhere and you might not, really recognize it. Another thing is bodily movements and exercise. And so a lot of people, exercise is key because it is a connection, a mind-body connection, and it actually produces a certain amount of cardio or intensive exercise actually helps us to excrete endorphins, which are sort of like the pleasure hormones that make us feel good and make us feel relaxed and feel pleasure, right? That's really important. Other neurotransmitters are activated through exercise. Our adrenaline, our norepinephrine, actually over time, serotonin, which really affects our mood, is regulated with regular exercise. So you can't say enough about the importance of exercise. Many people feel like they've been cut off. If you were a gym person, or you always went out to go exercising, or you were part of an exercise class or group, you can feel like, a lot of people go to yoga classes, you can feel like you're completely cut off from that. And so it's important to look at what you can do in your current environment. Can you do a few, gentle yoga stretches just to get your body connected and moving? Can you, sit on the ground and bend over? Can you touch your toes? Can you do some chair stretches, with your arms? Can you sit up straight and do deep breathing, right? Anything that gets you more connected to your body is going to be really, really important. One thing that I have seen explode is there's like an explosion of online fitness classes, dance classes, yoga classes, group fitness. Everything's happening on Zoom and other platforms. And so some of them are free, some of them are paid. And it gives you that chance, especially, when there are also things on YouTube, but even when you are doing those live Zoom classes, that's a chance to have some interaction, because you see everybody's little, square there. You see that everyone's participating. It can create a shared sense of a shared experience, which helps to give you more of a sense of connection. So then it sort of like serves two purposes. So you really want to make sure you focus on those bodily movements. Your basic needs are key. And then you also, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, it also talks about how the higher self, we have needs to attend to our higher self. We want to connect. We want to feel like we have a sense of purpose. We want to feel like we are competent and able. And that's why having a lack of control, like in many respects that we do, it can eat at, that part of our identity where we feel like we might have been competent or making improvements or, just doing things to attend to that higher self. So you want to make sure that you feed that need as well, right? So you want to feed your basic needs, but also if you have those higher needs, right? So you want to make sure, and also those mid needs, which have to do with relationships. And so you want to make sure you find ways to connect. So much of what is distressing about this pandemic is that it is disconnecting us. We are literally being told that in order to save ourselves and our societies, that we have to isolate and disconnect. And it almost goes against human, common sense and human nature. We are social beings. We are actually wired to connect. When we are born, we connect. A newborn connects to its mother, and hormones, oxytocin and other hormones are released that sort of like give you that feeling of love and connection. So this is built into who we are as human beings. And to be told that you can't, in many cultures, hugging and kissing, when you greet someone, shaking hands, that is so vital to showing that you are connected. And so we are being cut off from that. It's really, really vital that we continue to find ways to connect. It's interesting. I saw somebody write about how in many ways, those of us who have access to computers and social media, we are privileged because we're able to connect globally throughout or across boundaries, even though we are not there physically with each other. So we have things like FaceTime and Zoom and Messenger and, inboxes on the various social media platforms. People are sharing what they're doing with the world. People are using things like TikTok and all of these funny apps, right, as a way to decompress and connect with the global community. But you want to make sure that even on a simpler level that you connect to those who are important to you and in your network. So your family and friends that you might not be able to see because everyone's, in quarantine, phone calls, FaceTime, it might be older people or young people that even just a phone call, if they don't have all of that technology, a phone call could be enough. I saw somebody talk about reviving the ancient art of letter writing. So what would it be like to write a letter to someone? What would it be like to write a letter to someone and say, tell them how you feel and to talk about all of the things that you used to do. I'm sorry, my kids are here and this is what's happening with many of us, right? This is what's happening with many of us, right? This is real life in action. My kids are in the background hollering and screaming, right? So this is the new normal. We're trying to stand here and be, give information and do work and have meetings, and then we still have to homeschool our kids or help our kids to manage this. And so that's what it is, right? So it's okay. But finding ways to connect. And so in some ways, the good news is for many people, they're able to be home and connect. I'm able to connect now with my kids in ways that I had not been able to do in so long because of our schedules, right? We always spent time together, but never, all day, all the time for weeks on end, right? So finding those jewels, those ways, those silver linings of how you can connect better to people you want to. You might revive the art also of long phone conversations. Now many people text and they do all kinds of things, but can you get back to the art of just a nice phone conversation, letter writing, anything that really just, again, helps you to slow down and reconnect with those that are important to you. You also want to, and then some people are also getting outdoors and kind of going on walks. So with two people, but you're staying, maybe a neighbor or someone, you guys are staying far apart. You might not be able to touch or, hug in the way that you used to, but you can still connect with them and have conversation. Also reaffirming your resilience and strength. So much of when we talk about crisis and disaster is we think about all of the horrible things, right? But there's so much growth that can come out of this. And naturally, I believe, and many psychologists know that we all have this internal resilience and strength within us. And sometimes we have to face adversity in order to have it come out fully. And so this is an opportunity to reframe or think about this whole thing differently, which is what type of resilience and strength is this bringing out in me? What are my good qualities? What positive things are able to shine through this? And it doesn't mean you're not struggling with it or that you don't go through periods where you don't feel like you're resilient or strong, but it's in those moments where it's important to really think about the ways and reaffirm the ways that you are resilient and strong. And that could be as simple as having a little notebook right? Where you every day, some people do gratitude journals, and you can do any kind of journal where you just jot down what went well that day, what you did in a way that you're proud of that day, and to kind of have a written record of it so that you can, look back on it. It's a tangible statement of your strengths when you're feeling like you're not doing so well. And to that end, it's so important for you to have compassion for yourself. This is a period of time where it's easy to be critical, to be pessimistic, to feel negative. And all of that is okay if you feel it, but having compassion for yourself, being able to acknowledge the ways that maybe you responded. Your kids are outside the door yelling and screaming. Maybe you yell back at them, and you're not proud of yourself for that, or you don't like the way that you haven't reached out to friends, or you feel like you haven't taken care of your basic needs, and you're not exercising, or you're not doing everything that everyone told you to do. It's important to have compassion for yourself and acknowledge how difficult it is, and know that you can start again the next minute, the next hour, the next day. All right. Having compassion for yourself allows you to get back up and try again. Okay. And another part of this that a lot of people are talking about is, what is the meaning? So making meaning is a human need. And so a lot of people are thinking about, how can we reframe this situation to make it have a deeper meaning for ourselves and those that we love? Can it have a meaning to say, you know what, all that I thought I needed, I don't need all of that. What I really need are loving relationships, a simplistic life where my needs are met, right? A lot of people are rethinking, especially in the midst of maybe the economic fallout. So people are thinking about, how can I reframe this situation to make it have deeper meaning that leads to growth, and that leads to, something bigger than this moment. And that's really important to keep sight of, because remember, we said that's showing that you're getting into thrive mode. Survival mode is really about focusing on my immediate needs, tunnel vision. Sometimes you can, you don't see perspective, and you only kind of see what's dangerous, what's negative, and what could hurt you, right? And then as you're starting to allow yourself, through taking care of your basic needs, through attending to your higher self, allowing yourself to reframe the situation. How can it have deeper meaning for yourself? Is this a chance? I've seen people talk about, they're using this to redo their homes and make it more beautiful in the way that they never had time to before. They're using it to talk to and have fun, with their kids or their spouse. If they're single and they wanted to get in a relationship, they're using it to really examine, what are the ways that they can empower themselves to like try to find love or find a relationship. People are saying, I've always wanted to write that book, or I've always wanted to take that online course to have a career change. I've always wanted to get that new certification, right? People are looking for ways to be creative and reframing this so that it has a deeper meaning for themselves and the people around them, right? Also, how can you find gratitude? We talked about the journal to affirm yourself, but also a lot of people like gratitude journals. One thing I'll say about gratitude is, keep it simple. Don't try to list 15 and 20 things. Write 3 things. That's enough, right? 3 things will usually come to you really quickly. You'll feel good about the fact that you can think of 3 things that you're grateful for. And that can actually, there's a lot of research that practicing gratitude can lift your mood, help you feel better about yourself, and it actually over time changes your brain. So all of these things we're talking about are evidence-based. Mindfulness, deep breathing, practicing gratitude, done consistently, they change your brain. They change your brain chemistry so that your brain responds. Your brain is less likely to go into that fight or flight mode unless it really needs to. It won't respond like as a false alarm and go into that survival mode. You're able to see perspective, see the big picture, and make meaning of things. So these things are really, really important in terms of, getting out of survival mode and going into thrive mode, okay? And so I love this sort of infographic or this picture because it really puts, it makes clear ways that you can act within this zone of what you can control. Remember, we said part of a disaster is that it's out of your control. Part of this pandemic is that you feel vulnerable. It highlights human vulnerability. So you really want to look at what are the things that I can control. There's so much that I can't control, right? Look at what we just had. Toilet paper was out, right? People were fighting over toilet paper and wipes and disinfectant, right? So you can't control how much toilet paper is at the store or how people are going to respond to that, the panic that might set in. You can't control how long this is going to last. The president might say, we're going to open up on this date, and then the data may come in and all of the scientists may say, no, that's dangerous, and it might have to be extended, right? For now, we know it's through April 30th, but who knows? We really cannot control that. There are all kinds of predictions, but we have no control over it. We have no control over how other people react. We don't have control over whether people panic, in our opinion, or if they underreact, in our opinion, right? We don't have control over other people's motives or what they're doing. We cannot predict what will happen. We cannot, again, control anyone else. We can't even control if other people will follow the rules of social distancing. I see people talking about how people are having parties and going to festivals, and people do not want to respect social distancing. And there's so many psychological reasons for that. But it is what it is, right? You cannot control it. So what can you do? You can let go of all of this out here. You can let go of all of it. Okay. But what can you control? There is so much. Look at all of these. There's as much that you can control as there is that you can't control. You can control having a positive attitude, following the recommendations of social distancing. You can't control what they do, but you can control the fact that you want to do it. You can control your own social distancing, your kindness and grace towards others. You can control whether you want to limit your social media or even reconfigure it so you only follow people that make you feel good or make you feel that reinforce your resilience and strength. You can turn off the news or you can decide to turn it on. It's completely up to you. You can control finding fun things to do at home. You might have games, you might have books. Many of us have books that we've had for years that we've never touched, or games or crossword puzzles, things that we just haven't had the time to be able to engage in. And we have control over unearthing those things, refocusing on them, and incorporating them into our lives. And that brings me to one of the most important things that I would say with healthy coping is developing a routine, creating your own new normal. So when you develop a routine, that again, that reinforces all of the things that you can control. If you have a routine in terms of getting up every day, having a certain thing to eat, making sure you eat breakfast or drink tea or coffee or some juice or something. Maybe, some people I suggest getting up, showering, getting dressed as if you are doing something, right? But some people, that might not be you. But part of my routine is to get up every morning, do my shower, do my prayers, get dressed, have my breakfast, have everything prepared for the kids. That gives me a sense of normalcy and control. When I'm doing those things, first of all, I'm focused on the present moment. Secondly, I'm not worried about all of these things that I can't control. I'm really focused on the things that I can control. So a routine can be so important. And you don't have to make your routine complicated. You can just make sure you have, like I call them 3 ends. So a morning bookend, an evening bookend, and something in the morning. So whatever you need for your morning routine, right? It could be deep breaths. It could be getting up and making sure you get dressed. It could be making sure you have a certain type of meal, right? Then you want to have a midday something that could be where you try a new activity or do some journaling or do some affirmations, something that you do that kind of reinforces you're how, feeling good about yourself. And then an evening bookend. So what is it that you do in the evening? Do you unwind? Do you have a show you like to watch, right? So if you have those three areas, then whatever you do in between, that's fine, right? Because again, this is a new normal. But if you have those three areas, then you're able, to feel like there's some normalcy, there's some consistency and predictability through, through your daily life. Okay, so this issue of control, I know, is very, very triggering, not having control, but you want to try to think about the ways that you do have control. Okay, and if you think about it, the only thing you can control is yourself. You really can't even control your kids, right? Look, my kids were outside the door yelling and screaming. At the end of the day, you cannot really control anything except yourself, right? And that's why when we go back to sort of the meaning of the breath, that is one of the things that you are able to do when you stop and you take a mindfulness moment to breathe in and out. There's so many different breathing exercises. You can just breathe in to a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and breathe out to a count of 4. Do that 3 or 4 times. You can do what's called a reset breath. You breathe in to a count of 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. The idea is that when you exhale slowly, that slows down relaxes your nervous system. It activates what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, which brings about calm, takes you out of that fight or flight mode, right? So slow exhale. You can do that breathing into areas of tension, into your body. You can do that. But most importantly, recognizing, giving yourself compassion for this new normal that we're all adjusting to. We're not going to get it perfect. Treat yourself. Don't only treat others with kindness and grace, but treat yourself with kindness and grace. Okay. So I want to thank you. I want to see if we have any questions on the chat. I'm going to stop the screen share. If you liked this webinar, if you felt it was helpful to you, please share the link. Okay. I want to see if we have any questions. All right. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, I see we have our participants here. I don't know where everybody's from, but I do hope that this information has been helpful to you. You can, like I said, feel free to share it. You can get back in touch with me and let me know what struggles you're having with implementing these healthy coping strategies, or let me know if you have other ideas, what has been working for you, right? Like I said, there are all kinds of dance classes and things like that you can get into. So someone says, I'm a nurse and that was really what I needed today. Wow, thank you, thank you, thank you. That kind of brings a little bit of tears to my eyes, only because the sacrifice that first responders, and I count anyone who is in the healthcare sphere. I'm a psychologist. I'm having the privilege to see my clients digitally online, but that's hard for many of them as well, right? But for all of the healthcare workers who are literally putting their lives at risk, we owe such gratitude. And that's sort of what keeps me, going and just wanting to help people to cope in healthy ways, so that they, wanting to help people, I'm sorry, I get emotional about it, help people to reinforce that we all have that inside of us to cope in healthy ways. It's all deep inside of us. We just have to dig down deep. We have to reach out when we need help. We have to know that we can't do this alone and that we have to have support, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's a support group. There are a lot of virtual support groups coming up, whether it's reaching out for professional help with a psychologist. or a mental health professional. Someone said, I'm in New York City, so the anxiety I have been feeling about this is only heightened by the fact that we are the US epicenter of this pandemic. No questions, but thank you for taking your time to offer this free webinar. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, Kim Nim, Jada Young, BW. Okay, I don't want to make you cry. Somebody said I'm crying too, but we appreciate it, and we want you who are all, you know, in any kind of job, whether it's the grocery store clerk, the police officer, the security guards, whoever is putting themselves out there to keep society running, you know, please, whatever it takes, take time out to take care of yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes of deep breathing, even if it's crying, you know, virtually on the shoulder of someone else. Make sure that you do that, okay? So thank you so much. This is available. This will be available if you want to rewatch it or share it with someone that you think needs it. And I wish you all so much goodness and wellness and resilience and strength, because I know that you have it in you, okay? Thank you so much. Somebody said, I love your kids for interrupting. Thank you. Thank you so much.